When my son called me that Friday evening and asked if I could stay at his house for 2 weeks, I said yes before he even finished explaining why. I didn't hesitate. I didn't ask questions. I just said yes. Because that's what mothers do, isn't it? We wait. We hope. We say yes when our children finally reach out, even if it's been months since the last real conversation. I'm 64 years old now. My name is Eleanor. And for most of my life I believed that love was enough. That if you loved your child deeply enough, completely enough, they would always find their way back to you. But love doesn't always work that way. My son Daniel is 37. He's successful, well-dressed, articulate. He works in finance. He married a woman named Vanessa 6 years ago. She's polished, sharp-eyed, always smiling in that controlled way that never quite reaches her eyes. I've never been close to either of them. Not because I didn't try. I did. I called. I sent cards. I showed up to dinners when invited. I smiled through every cool reception, every short answer, every polite but distant conversation. But over the years, the calls became less frequent. The invitations stopped. And I learned to live with a quiet, constant ache in my chest, the feeling of being a mother who is no longer needed. So when Daniel called that Friday and said he needed me, something inside me lit up. It was pathetic, maybe. But it was real. He said he and Vanessa were going out of town. A work trip. Something urgent. They'd be gone for 2 weeks, maybe a little more. And they needed someone to stay at the house. Why? I asked, trying not to sound too eager. Vanessa's mother, he said. She's here. She's not well. I knew about Vanessa's mother. Her name was Diane. I'd met her once years ago at the wedding. She was a vibrant woman back then. Laughing, dancing, full of life. But 2 years ago, she was in a terrible car accident. According to what I'd been told, she'd suffered severe brain damage. She was in a coma. Unresponsive. The doctors said she would never wake up. Vanessa had brought her home rather than keeping her in a facility. She hired nurses. She set up a room. She cared for her mother in her own house. I remember thinking it was noble. Now I know better. Daniel explained that the live-in nurse had a family emergency and had to leave suddenly. They hadn't found a replacement yet. And since they couldn't cancel this trip, they needed someone to be there. Just to monitor things. Make sure Diane was comfortable. Keep the house secure. She won't wake up, Mom, Daniel said softly. She hasn't moved in 2 years. You just need to be there. That's all. I felt a strange tug in my chest. Not suspicion. Not fear. Just need. He needed me. And I said yes. I packed a small suitcase that night. I told myself this was a new beginning. Maybe this would be the thing that brought us closer again. Maybe after 2 weeks of helping, of being useful, of being present, Daniel would see me again. Really see me. That I drove to their house the next morning. It was a large home in a quiet neighborhood. Clean. Elegant. The kind of place that looks perfect from the outside. Vanessa met me at the door. She was dressed in travel clothes, sleek black pants, a cream blouse, her hair pulled back in a tight bun. Eleanor, she said, smiling that smile. Thank you so much for doing this. Of course, I said. I'm happy to help. She led me inside. The house smelled faintly of lavender and something medicinal. Everything was spotless. Not a thing out of place. Daniel was upstairs finishing packing. Vanessa walked me through the main floor, showing me where everything was: kitchen, living room, laundry. Then she took me upstairs. At the end of the hallway was a closed door. That's my mother's room, Vanessa said. Her voice was calm. Steady. She's stable. The equipment monitors her vitals. There's a feeding tube. And 4 drip. Everything is automated. You don't need to do anything medical. Just check on her once or twice a day. Make sure nothing looks unusual. Unusual how? I asked. Vanessa's smile didn't waver. You'll know if something's wrong. But honestly, there won't be. She's been like this for 2 years. Nothing changes. She opened the door. The room was dim. The curtains were drawn. There was a hospital bed in the center, surrounded by machines, monitors for stands, a ventilator humming softly. And in the bed, perfectly still, was Diane. She looked so small. So frail. Her skin was pale, almost gray. Her hair, once thick and dark, was thin now, spread across the pillow. Her eyes were closed. Her chest rose and fell in shallow mechanical rhythm. I felt a wave of sadness. This woman so full of life once was now just existing. Does she feel anything? I asked quietly. No, Vanessa said. The doctors say she's not aware. She doesn't feel pain. She doesn't dream. She's just gone. I nodded, though something about the way she said it felt cold. Daniel appeared in the doorway. We need to get going, he said. Flight's in 3 hours. Vanessa handed me a folder. Emergency numbers. Instructions. Everything you need. Thank you, Mom, Daniel said. He gave me a quick, stiff hug. We'll be back in 2 weeks. And then they were gone. I stood in the hallway, listening to the sound of their car pulling away. The house was silent. I looked back at the open door, at the woman lying still in the bed, and I thought to myself, 2 weeks. I can do this. I had no idea what I was about to discover. I had no idea that in 48 hours, the woman in that bed would open her eyes. And when she did, she would tell me the truth. A truth so horrifying, I would question everything I thought I knew about my own son. The first day passed slowly. I spent most of it getting familiar with the house. I made myself tea in the kitchen. I opened the windows to let in fresh air. I walked through each room trying to feel less like a stranger. But the house felt empty. Not just quiet empty, like it had never really been lived in. Like it was a stage set, waiting for someone to walk on and play a role. I checked on Diane twice that first day. Each time I opened the door slowly, almost afraid to disturb the stillness. She hadn't moved. Her eyes were closed. Her hands lay flat on the blanket. The machines beeped softly. The floor dripped. Everything looked exactly as Vanessa had described. But something about the room unsettled me. Maybe it was the smell, sterile, too clean, like a hospital room that had been scrubbed of all warmth. Or maybe it was the way Diane's face looked in the dim light. Peaceful, yes, but also distant, like she was somewhere far away, unreachable. I stood there for a moment just watching her breathe. I'm sorry, I whispered. I'm sorry this happened to you. She didn't respond, of course. I closed the door and went back downstairs. That night I made myself dinner. I sat at the kitchen table alone, eating soup from a can. I thought about Daniel. I thought about the years that had passed since he was a boy. Since he used to run to me when he was scared. Since he used to tell me everything. Where had that boy gone? When had he become this distant, polished stranger who only called when he needed something? I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes, but I blinked them away. Stop it, Eleanor, I told myself. You're here. You're helping. That's enough. But deep down I wasn't sure it was. I went to bed early that night, in the guest room down the hall from Diane's room. I left the door open just in case. Just in case of what, I didn't know. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something in this house was waiting. The second day started the same way. I woke up early, made coffee, checked on Diane. She was still. I spent the morning cleaning, even though the house didn't need it. I dusted shelves. I wiped down counters. I folded blankets. I needed something to do. Something to keep my mind busy. Around noon I made lunch. A sandwich, some fruit, and ate it in the living room while watching the news. But I couldn't focus. My thoughts kept drifting back to that room upstairs. To Diane. To the way her hands lay so perfectly still on the blanket. To the way her breathing never changed, never faltered. It was too perfect. Too controlled. I shook my head. You're imagining things. But I couldn't ignore the feeling. That afternoon I went upstairs again. I opened the door to Diane's room and stepped inside. The air was cool. The curtains were still drawn. The machines hummed quietly. I walked over to the bed and looked down at her. Her face was calm. Expressionless. Her eyelids didn't flutter. Her fingers didn't twitch. I reached out, hesitating for a moment, and then gently touched her hand. It was warm. Not cold. Not lifeless. Warm. I frowned. I don't know why that surprised me. Of course she was warm. She was alive. Her heart was beating. Blood was flowing through her veins. But something about it felt wrong. I pulled my hand back and looked at the 4-bag hanging beside the bed. Clear liquid. Dripping slowly into the tube that disappeared beneath the blanket. I looked at the label on the bag. Saline. Nutrients. Standard. Nothing unusual. But then I noticed something else. A small separate bag, clipped to the side of the four stand. It was half hidden behind the larger one. The liquid inside was slightly cloudy. I leaned closer. There was no label on it. I frowned. Why wouldn't it have a label? I made a mental note to ask Vanessa about it when she called. But she didn't call that day. Neither did Daniel. I told myself they were busy, that they trusted me, that everything was fine. But as I closed the door to Diane's room that evening, I felt a cold knot forming in my stomach. Something wasn't right. I just didn't know what. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in the guest bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the house. The hum of the refrigerator downstairs. The creak of the floorboards settling. And from down the hall the faint rhythmic beeping of the machines in Diane's room. I kept thinking about that unlabeled four bag. About the way Diane's hand had felt warm, alive. About the way Vanessa had said so calmly, "She doesn't feel anything." But how could she know? How could anyone know what someone in a coma feels? I turned over, pulling the blanket up to my chin. "You're overthinking this," I told myself. "You're lonely. You're looking for something to worry about, because you don't know what else to do." But the feeling wouldn't go away. Around midnight I heard something. A faint sound. At first I thought I was imagining it. But then I heard it again. A soft creak. Like a floorboard shifting. I sat up, my heart pounding. It was coming from down the hall. From Diane's room. I held my breath, listening. Silence. Then another creak. I got out of bed slowly, my hands trembling. I stepped into the hallway. The house was dark. The only light came from the small nightlight plugged into the wall near the bathroom. I walked toward Diane's room, my bare feet silent on the carpet. The door was closed. I pressed my ear against it. Nothing. I waited. And then I heard it. A soft, shallow breath. But not the mechanical rhythm of the ventilator. This was different. This was deliberate. My hand shook as I reached for the doorknob. I turned it slowly. The door opened with a soft click. I stepped inside. The room was dark, except for the faint glow of the monitors. I looked at the bed. Diane was lying exactly as she had been before. Still. Unmoving. But as I stood there watching, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Her eyes were open. Just barely. Thin slits of white, reflecting the glow of the machines. And she was looking at me. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. For a moment neither of us moved. And then slowly Diane blinked. Once. Twice. And then her lips parted just slightly. And in a voice so faint I almost didn't hear it, she whispered, "Help me." I couldn't move. I stood there in the dark staring at Diane, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. Her eyes were open. Not fully. Not wide. But open enough that I could see the faint glimmer of awareness behind them. She was looking at me. And she had spoken. "Help me." 2 words. Barely a whisper. But they echoed in my mind like a scream. I took a shaky step backward, my hand still gripping the door frame. "Diane," I whispered. Her eyes shifted slightly, tracking my movement. "Please," she breathed. Her voice was hoarse, broken, like she hadn't used it in years. "Please, help me." I felt my knees go weak. This wasn't possible. She was in a coma. She'd been in a coma for 2 years. The doctors had said she would never wake up. But she was awake. She was looking at me. She was speaking. I forced myself to move. I crossed the room quickly, my hands trembling as I leaned over the bed. "Diane," I said, my voice shaking. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes focused on mine. Slowly, painfully, she nodded. Tears sprang to my eyes. "Oh my God," I whispered. "Oh my God, you're awake." She blinked again and a tear slid down her cheek. "Not awake," she whispered. "Never asleep." I stared at her, my mind struggling to understand. "What do you mean?" I asked. She swallowed, the movement slow and labored. "They drugged me," she said. Her voice was so faint I had to lean closer to hear. "Every day. They drugged me." My stomach turned. "Who?" I asked, though part of me already knew. "Vanessa," Diane whispered. "And Daniel." The room tilted. I grabbed the edge of the bed to steady myself. "No," I said. "No, that's not possible." But even as I said it, I felt the truth settling over me like ice water. The unlabeled 4-bag. The way Vanessa had been so calm, so confident. The way she'd said she doesn't feel anything. Because she thought Diane couldn't. Because she thought Diane was trapped. I need to call someone, I said, my voice rising. I need to call an ambulance. The police. No, Diane said, her voice suddenly stronger. No. Not yet. I stared at her. Why not? She closed her eyes for a moment as if gathering strength. Because, she said slowly, if you call now, they'll know. And they'll come back. And they'll kill me. I pulled a chair over to the side of the bed and sat down, my whole body shaking. Diane's eyes were still open, watching me. Tell me everything, I said. She nodded weakly. And then in a voice that was broken and raw, she told me. She told me that 2 years ago, after the car accident, she had woken up in the hospital. She had been injured, yes. But she was conscious. She was aware. The doctors said she would recover. But Vanessa had other plans. She started visiting me every day, Diane said. Alone. She'd send the nurses away. And she'd talk to me. What did she say? I asked. Diane's jaw tightened. She said, I was a burden. That I was expensive. That I was in the way. I felt sick. She said she and Daniel had been struggling with money. That they needed my money. My savings. My accounts. Everything. Diane's voice cracked. And she said that if I didn't cooperate, if I didn't sign the papers she brought, she would make sure I never left that hospital bed. I covered my mouth with my hand. I refused, Diane said. So she started bringing something in my something that made me slow, confused, weak. A sedative? I whispered. Diane nodded. At first just a little. Enough to make me tired. But then more and more. Until I couldn't move. Couldn't speak. Couldn't even open my eyes. But you could still think? Yes, she said, and her voice broke. I could hear everything. I could feel everything. But I couldn't move. Couldn't scream. Couldn't fight back. Tears streamed down my face. She told the doctors I'd slipped into a coma, Diane continued. She forged papers. She had me declared incompetent. And then she brought me here. To her house. Where no one could see. Where no one would ask questions. And Daniel? I asked, though I already knew. He's the one who handles the money, Diane said. He set up fake accounts. Fake transfers. He's been stealing from me for 2 years. And Vanessa? She keeps me quiet. I felt like I was going to be sick. Why didn't they just kill you? I asked, the words bitter on my tongue. Diane's eyes darkened. Because that would be suspicious. A sudden death. An investigation. But if I die slowly over time from complications, no one questions it. No one looks twice. I stood up, pacing, my mind racing. We have to call the police, I said. Right now. We have to. No, Diane said again, more firmly this time. I turned to look at her. Why not? Because they'll destroy the evidence, she said. They'll say I'm delusional. That I'm confused. That I'm still in a coma and you're imagining things. And then they'll drug me again. And this time they won't stop. I stared at her, my heart sinking. So what do we do? Diane's eyes met mine. We wait, she said. We gather proof. And when they come back, we make sure they can't lie their way out of it. The next few days were the longest of my life. During the day I played my role. I checked on Diane, making sure to keep my face neutral, my movements routine. I called Daniel and Vanessa when they checked in, kept my voice calm and steady, told them everything was fine. But at night, when the house was dark and silent, Diane and I talked. She told me everything. She told me about the fake medical reports Vanessa had filed, about the forged power of attorney documents Daniel had drawn up, about the private nurse Vanessa had hired, who wasn't really a nurse at all, just someone paid to show up once a week and pretend to check vitals. She told me about the unlabeled 4-bag, the one I'd noticed on my first day. That's what they use, Diane said. It's a sedative, mixed with something else. Something that slows my heart rate, makes me look weak. How do you know? I asked. Because I've been watching, she said. Every time Vanessa comes in, she switches the bags. She thinks I don't notice. But I do. I looked at the stand. The unlabeled bag was still there, half empty. We need to get a sample, I said. For evidence. Diane nodded. And we need to record them, she said. When they come back. When they think no one's listening. I felt a chill run through me. You think they'll say something? Diane's eyes hardened. I know they will. Because they think they've won. Over the next week we worked in secret. I found a small digital recorder in one of the drawers in the study downstairs. I tested it, made sure it worked, and hid it under the nightstand in Diane's room. I used a syringe carefully, quietly, to take a sample of the liquid from the unlabeled bag, and stored it in a sealed container in the back of the fridge. I went through Daniel's office looking for documents, files, anything that might prove what they'd done. And I found it. In a locked drawer in his desk, hidden beneath folders and notebooks, I found a stack of papers. Bank statements. Transfers. Withdrawals. All from Diane's accounts. All signed with her name. But the signatures were wrong. Too clean. Too perfect. Forged. I took photos of every page. And every night I sat with Diane and we talked. We talked about her life before this. About the person she used to be. About her daughter, the daughter she had loved, raised, trusted. And about the moment she realized that love meant nothing. I should have seen it, Diane said one night, her voice hollow. I should have known. You couldn't have, I said gently. But I did, she said. I knew Vanessa was different. Cold. But I thought it was just her personality. I thought she'd grow out of it. I thought, if I loved her enough. Her voice broke. I reached out and took her hand. I know, I said. I thought the same thing about Daniel. And in that moment we weren't just two women trapped in a nightmare. We were two mothers mourning the children we thought we knew. On the 13th day Daniel called. We're coming home tomorrow, he said. My heart stopped. Tomorrow? Yeah. Flight lands in the afternoon. We should be there by dinner time. Okay, I said, keeping my voice steady. I'll have everything ready. Thanks, Mom, he said. And then after a pause, how's Diane? I swallowed. She's the same, I said. No change. Good, he said. And the way he said it, so calm, so satisfied, made my skin crawl. I hung up and went upstairs. Diane was waiting. They're coming back tomorrow, I said. She nodded. Then we finish this, she said. They arrived just after 6 in the evening. I heard the car pull into the driveway, heard the doors slam, heard their voices as they walked up to the house. I was in the kitchen wiping down the counter, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped the cloth. The front door opened. Mom, Daniel called. In here, I said, forcing a smile as they walked in. Daniel looked tired but pleased. Vanessa looked as polished as ever, her hair perfect, her smile in place. How was the trip? I asked. Productive, Vanessa said. Very productive. Daniel set his bag down. How was everything here? Fine, I said. No problems at all. And my mother? Vanessa asked. Still the same, I said. I checked on her this morning. Nothing's changed. Vanessa nodded, satisfied. Good, she said. And then she looked at Daniel. Something passed between them. A glance. A silent agreement. And I felt my stomach drop. I'm going to go check on her, Vanessa said. I'll come with you, Daniel said. I watched them walk upstairs, my heart pounding. This was it. I waited 5 minutes. Then I followed. I walked up the stairs slowly, quietly, my pulse roaring in my ears. The door to Diane's room was half open. I could hear them inside. Still stable. Vanessa was saying. For now, Daniel replied. But not for much longer. I pressed myself against the wall, listening. How much longer do you think we have? Vanessa asked. A month. Maybe less. And then it's over, Daniel said. We file the death certificate. We claim the estate. And we move on. What about your mother? She doesn't suspect anything. She's too soft. Too eager to please. I closed my eyes, my chest tightening. And if she does figure it out? Vanessa asked. There was a long pause. She won't, Daniel said. But if she does, we'll handle it. I felt tears sting my eyes. Vanessa laughed softly. You're sure this will work? I'm sure, Daniel said. We've come this far. We're not stopping now. I heard footsteps. They were coming back toward the door. I turned and hurried down the hallway, slipping into the guest room just as they stepped out. I stood there, my back against the door, my heart hammering, and I realized they weren't just planning to let Diane die. They were planning to make sure of it. That night, I waited until the house was silent. Then I went to Diane's room. She was awake, her eyes open in the dark. They're going to do it soon, I whispered. Maybe tonight. Diane nodded. Then we move now, she said. I pulled out my phone, and I made the call. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of voices downstairs. I got dressed quickly and went down. Daniel and Vanessa were in the kitchen drinking coffee, talking in low voices. They stopped when they saw me. Morning, Mom, Daniel said, smiling. Morning, I said. Vanessa stood up. I'm going to check on my mother. I'll come with you, Daniel said. I followed them upstairs. My phone was in my pocket. The recorder was still under the nightstand. And outside, parked 2 blocks away, were 2 police officers waiting for my signal. We walked into Diane's room. She was lying still, eyes closed, just as she had been for the past 2 years. Vanessa walked over to the 4 stand. She reached for the unlabeled bag. I think it's time to increase the dosage, she said. Daniel nodded. How much? Enough, Vanessa said. She pulled a small vial from her pocket. And as she uncapped it, I pulled out my phone. And I pressed send. Diane's eyes opened. Vanessa froze. Daniel's face went white. What? Vanessa started. Hello, Vanessa, Diane said, her voice clear and strong. Vanessa staggered backward. No, she whispered. No, that's not. I've been awake, Diane said. The whole time. Daniel looked at me, his eyes wide with horror. Mom, what? I know everything, I said. And so do they. The front door opened downstairs. Heavy footsteps. Voices. Police. We have a warrant. Vanessa dropped the vial. It shattered on the floor. And then the officers were in the room, reading them their rights, pulling them away. Daniel looked at me one last time. Mom, he said, his voice breaking. Please. I looked at him. At the son I had raised. At the man he had become. And I said nothing. 6 months later, I stood on a beach, the wind pulling at my hair, the sun warm on my face. Diane stood beside me, smiling. We had testified. We had watched them be convicted. And now we were free. Thank you, Diane said softly. For what? I asked. For believing me, she said. For not walking away. I reached over and took her hand. You saved me too, I said. And I meant it. Because in that house, in that nightmare, I had learned something. Family isn't blood. Family is choice. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from the people who should have loved you. And build a new life with the people who do. We stood there for a long time watching the waves. And for the first time in years I felt at peace.